Not only did you, for me, model a life that was filled with education, lifelong learning, and still lifelong learning, but I looked at you through the lens of entrepreneurship too, Mon.
All I can do is just sit there. There's not a thing. It's all out of my hands.
We have a lot of great plans for Lung Cancer Strong, and I'm so grateful that you're my mom and that you've been here for all of it. Wow, Mom, take a seat in the suite for this 100th episode. Oh my God, it's the 100th episode. Here we go. Can you believe it?
Yes, I can. I've seen most of them.
I know. Amazing. First of all, I'm so glad. I'm so grateful that we're both here, especially given the set of circumstances that we've been dealing with our family. But, unbeknownst to you, when I started this podcast about 5 years ago, I said to myself that I was committed to doing the 100th episode, that I said that I wasn't going to look back. I wasn't necessarily going to care about stats and run for performance, but what I was going to commit was the act of creating this content because it really filled a gap. These types of stories from women especially has filled a gap in not only the wealth management industry, but blends into entrepreneur and business. So when I always knew that I was going to hit that 100th episode, no matter what, no matter how long it took.
Yeah.
And here we are.
And Tina, I just want you to know I feel so privileged to be among all these women that you've interviewed and some men. I won't forget there were men too.
Yeah.
But the women were smart. They were educated, who through their own struggles, especially in the workplace, have achieved fabulous goals. It was so inspiring and made me wish I had been born maybe a little later.
I feel that way with this generation too. So I can see how you could feel like that. I think with every generation, there are so many, right now, especially technology, so many advances in technology that allow this to create a totally different world. But back then when I started, I always knew that you were going to be the 100th episode. And so you fit directly. You have made so many power moves throughout your own life. You've been an inspiration to me. You've been a real help to the show because, again, when I just had that one listener, you guys, when we started in the suite and had one listener, and that was my mother, you gave me the feedback that I needed in order to get better. And so here we are. So let's talk about you. And I know that this is it might be a little bit hard. But I think that your story is really one that has to get out and has to get to our In the Suite listeners. So let's kind of start about growing up, because growing up definitely shapes who you are. And you are the oldest of 9 children. And I say that proudly. I say that to people. I actually brag a lot about you when you're not in the room. And I say yes, because we have our daily Christmases in California and Vegas throughout the years. But when I look back at time, I see that you made so many power moves. What do you see when you look back in time? Your childhood was not the easiest thing, being the oldest of 9 children and growing up the way that you grew up. What do you think that helped to shape you and strengthen you?
Well, in retrospect, I was trying to survive. It was extremely chaotic growing up, not because there were so many of us, but because the people that were supposed to be in charge, namely my parents, were kids themselves who weren't prepared for the responsibilities. My father, when I was 16, deserted for the last time, leaving us with nothing. He had a gambling problem. Right. Those years, what happened is we went on welfare. And this is not the first time it happened. It was the second time it happened because he was gone when I was 13 for a while. And then he came back and eventually left for the last time. The people around my mother were primarily the priests from the Catholic Church. My mother was very religious, and we were brought up to be Catholics. We went to Catholic school, and at that time, supposedly Catholic schools were going to Catholic school was getting a great education, but looking back, I can tell you that was not so.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, and in fact, I made sure that my children went to public school. The other thing was that the advice that she got was detrimental to all of us. We were like farmed out to work. I started working actually long before this occurrence. I started working at 10. My mother saw us as people who could help with the burden of all of these kids. And we were just kids ourselves.
And then the lexicon for that is slave labor now.
Yeah. It was. We were chattels.
Yeah.
Anyway, but getting through that period, especially when I was 16, was very, very difficult. I don't have to go into detail, but I tell you this, we all, none of us are going to get out of life scot-free. So whatever our struggles are, we learn to adapt. I had a plan. After that time, I had a plan. I was going to get the hell out of there. I was going to find my life. And that's exactly what I did. I managed to finish high school. I went from Catholic school to public school. I was actually expelled from Catholic school
For like wearing nail polish or something like that?
No, for hitchhiking.
Which everybody
hitchhiking and running away from home. Anyway, but I went to public school and finished up, and I moved when I was 18 years old. Even before I finished high school, I moved out of my house into an apartment with a friend. We had no furniture, but that was okay. Anyway, I stayed there until I was able to get on a bus and head to New York, which I did by myself at age 19 with $30 in my pocket.
And you literally, like, here was California where you grew up, and then you went and then all the way to the other side of the United States.
Exactly.
You went from the West Coast to the East.
Exactly.
That was a power move for you, Mom.
That was it.
I can only imagine. You then shortly thereafter, when did you meet my father? So
I was living from age 19 to I met your father when I was 23.
And my father died 20 years ago, everybody, and they were divorced when I was 5 or 6. You were my father, God bless him. He had
was wife number 2.
Four marriages. My mom, you were wife number 2. But, talk a little bit about meeting him and what that part of your life was like, because that's what gave birth to me and Tony.
Yeah.
Our only 2 children.
So, at the time in New York, this was the early 60s. I came when I arrived in New York. There were, I stayed in a what they called an SRO, a single room, single people only, and I looked in the New York Times, and you could get roommates through the New York Times, which is what I did. And I found these 2 girls, and one of them was named Barbara, and Barbara was a former nun. And then the other one was named Sharon, and Sharon worked for Ed Sullivan. And and in his crew in some capacity. Yeah. We lived together on East 86th Street for about 6 months. Then I took a quick trip to California, and then came back, and Barbara went with me to California, and she stayed. And I lost contact with my other roommate. I found another roommate whose name was Lois, and Lois Pomerantz. And Lois and I are still friends.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she and I met again through the New York Times. And Lois one night calls, I was waitressing. I waitressed and bartended because I had no education at that point. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was just living from day to day.
And people still do it that way, Mom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, Lois calls me up one night and she said, get dressed. I have this guy I want you to meet. Okay, so it's 3:00 in the morning, as a matter of fact. So I get dressed, and in walks your father. And he was in a tuxedo, and I didn't know that was his uniform for work. He was just a really attractive guy. So he says to me, we're going to go uptown. And he takes me, we take a taxi up to Harlem. And there's after hours places, and he was working in a saloon, and after hours people would go, and they would go to after hours places where they would party and drink,
right,
or play cards or whatever they would do. So we get up to Harlem, and as we're getting up there, the place is being raided because after hours places were illegal.
Now they're in vogue, you guys.
Yeah. So now he's there, and everybody knew him. Hi, Tony, how are you? Oh, I was stunned. I was absolutely floored by all this, and I was completely entranced because I said, "Oh my God, this guy is so well known. He's so popular. He's so this. He's so handsome. He's so a lot of things." And when I look back now, he was a lot of the things I wasn't. And so what I think I was looking for was somebody to bring me out of myself. And here was the guy. No question about it. After that, we started dating, or whatever you call. I was working, again, I was waitressing at a place next to his. And so we would meet after work, and we didn't go up to after hours places. But Tony was very instrumental in taking me to places on 52nd Street, jazz joints. He introduced me to music. He introduced me to theater. He introduced me to social life. He introduced me to partying. He introduced me to so many things. And for that, I was always grateful. Always grateful. His brother worked at Jilly's, which was a nightclub where Frank Sinatra used to hang out. So we used to go in and hang out with him there and things like that. Anyway, so eventually Tony and I married. The warning signs were there. I just didn't see them.
Oh, none of us see them so early in life. And I think the restaurant business that marked his career forever was responsible for, we'll just call it a lot of bad habits.
Well, a considerable number of bad habits.
Yeah.
But
in another world.
Yeah. But I was not, I mean, I kept working for a while. Then I had you, and I stayed home for the period between you and your brother, Tony. And I saw my life unraveling. I saw what I would consider my parents' marriage right in front of me. I knew that if I stayed, this is what would happen. So what I did is I decided I needed a profession. I could no longer just be a waitress or a bartender. I needed a profession. So I enrolled in nursing school at Bergen Community College. And by day or evening, depending when the classes were, I attended school.
And that was your second power move. The first was going from the West Coast to the East Coast, and then the decision to get your education
Right.
at Bergen Community first.
Right.
And that gets better, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, eventually I was able to finish most of my schooling except for the last semester, when there was Tony came home one night after he had cracked up the car, had a major accident with the car. We no longer had a car. People were calling, the Shylocks were calling. They get your husband on the phone. He owes us money.
Oh boy.
Blah, blah, blah. So all of this was coming in, and it all came to a head. And I said to him, you have to go. You have to go. I don't want you here. You have to leave. No, I can't leave. I mean, it was a whole thing. No. But eventually I got him out of the house, and I said to myself, I'll finish school, and I don't have that much more to go, and we'll see. So I got myself a job. Actually, I got the job when I started hearing when the calls came in from the Shylocks. So I had gotten a job, again, waitressing in a restaurant in town. And I only had to work a couple nights, and it worked out so that I had enough time to go to school. I also could be there when you kids were up. So you really never missed me, or you missed me, but I was in and out, but not always gone. Anyway, eventually I found someone to watch you while I finished up. Okay, so now I have my nursing degree, and I go for a job. I go into New York City. I was working at Bergen Pines in North Jersey, which was a
Psychiatric hospital.
a psychiatric. Well, it wasn't all. Yeah, it wasn't all a psychiatric hospital at that time, but I worked up on the locked unit for the males. Well, first for a short term, the females. Working with females in a locked unit, they're a little on the testy side, and they do not have a problem hitting you or kicking you as one did and kicked me down the hall for some odd reason. I can't remember what. So I was transferred over to the male unit, and the men usually don't. They have the presence of mind not to strike women. So I worked there for over a year, and then I got this job in New York City, which I loved, working over at New York Psychiatric with borderline.
That was to tell you. Right?
No, borderline personality.
Okay.
It's New York State Psychiatric. And then the troubles began, because I was having problems with getting help for you kids.
Right, because at this point, ladies and gentlemen, you're on your own. My father isn't really taking responsibility and ownership
At all.
So you are the sole breadwinner, the sole provider, the sole everything of our existence. And so here you are, you're trying to juggle everything. And so when did this kind of come to a head? Because you switched into nursing, and then you went on to earn a bachelor's degree over at St. Peter's University, like a really nice university.
Yeah, but the thing was, I had to quit working in New York City because I could not find childcare.
Yeah.
So we moved to Hackensack for a time, and you were in a group of kids, and I got audited by the IRS for my child care credit, and I had no idea that you needed proof that you paid something.
That we had no money and that we were in need.
No, but I paid this woman cash to watch you and Tony.
Yeah.
And this was during the day while I was working. So she would not, of course, because she wouldn't. Why would she?
Right.
She said no, she would not give me proof that I had paid her. So this created another problem because I was then the IRS audited me. They made me pay back this money, which I didn't have. But anyway, I eventually straightened all that out, but lost for that. I had to move out of the city, move from my city job because now I had nobody to watch you guys. So I moved back to Tenafly because I was not happy with living in Hackensack to begin with. Anyway, so I moved back to Tenafly. And when I moved there the second time, again, the problem was daycare. So I stopped nursing. I went back to waitressing because I could make in 2 days or 3 days what I was making in nursing. And I didn't have problems to have someone come and watch you guys just for a few hours a night. So that's what I did for a while, and I had no choice. I couldn't figure out how to change all this. So enter Danny, and Danny and I had met when I was working in Bergenfield, and he had a salon in Tenafly. So Danny and I started living together. And he had his own salon in Tenafly, and we rented a house in Tenafly. And before we started living together, I had said to him that I wanted to go back for a degree. I didn't want just to have an associate's degree. So I went back for a bachelor's degree.
Another power move, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, at St. Peter's University, which was offering night courses and things. Now, if I went through 4 years of college. I was 29 when I started. I was 45 or 6, I think, when I finished. So this is a different kind of an education because you're already in the world. You're street smart.
Yeah.
You're savvy. What am I doing with this education? It's shaping me in a different way. I know that. So now I wanted to look at the world through an educated periscope. In the meantime, I'm go back to my sister and brothers for a minute. My sister became an attorney. My brothers all educated themselves. Who was an engineer? Two engineers actually. Every one of them educated themselves, and this is a family raised essentially on welfare for the last half of their lives. Anyway, none of them fell down. They all did well for themselves. All right, back to my story.
I love that, by the way. Thank you very much for highlighting that because I am in awe.
Yeah.
When we have our daily Christmases, Mom, I am in awe of how successful all of your brothers and your sister turned out.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's because that you had the welfare card. There are lots of things that we do in terms of how we live our lives, fear of poverty and You know, if it was it a fear, or was it just a response that felt very like, not necessarily that you were running away from anything, but just that, hey, you know, that internally that you needed to change stuff. And it sounded like education, which I think has always been the ticket of way out. I still think that education is the way out. I will.
Yeah, education is the way out. I have to say that my parents didn't leave anything in terms of monetary value, but what they left us was genetic in nature. We were all smart. We had a terrific sense of humor as a group. We had, nobody said, oh, I'm not going to be like my father, or I'm not going to be like my mother. What we said to ourselves is, what am I going to be? Who can I be? And that's the thing we followed. It wasn't a question, I'm never going to live that life. I have to say, I made a statement earlier about in my marriage, when I saw that life I was going to live, I made a change. I made a switch. I had to, because who would purposely go back into that kind of an existence? Anyway, and I had my kids to think of. And one of the things that I felt with college, now my kids, for instance, when I started back at St. Peter's, I had to take a math test. Now, I'm not very good at math.
Neither am I.
But my son is great.
Yes.
He tutored me.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Tony did, he was a tutor for the Princeton Review.
Yeah.
And then your granddaughter, my daughter, Rachel, is a secondary mathematics education major from Delaware University. So, I didn't get the math gene either.
No, but that's okay. It's in the family. It's working. So anyway, so I went back to school, and part of the reason I wanted to finish, and part of the reason that I made it quite clear to my kids, and they saw me study, they saw my homework, they
only went to your graduation,
and I forced them to go to their graduation. She talks like she was there willingly.
Well,
we're not there willingly. But anyway, I have the picture to prove it. But at any rate, so my thought was this: as a parent, what I owe my children is an education. What they are not going to leave me until they have their educations. Of course, they fought me tooth and nail on this. Tony, not so much. You fought me a lot. You didn't want to do it, blah, blah, blah. But you did it.
And then doubled down on that.
Yeah.
So, earned a master's at NYU.
That's right.
With a perfect 4.0. So whatever you did, like, there might have been a time growing up that I was rebellious and not listening, but I think it's amazing how, as a parent, how you modeled that philosophy, and eventually it made it into my psyche and my brain.
Yeah.
So that I could do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always, and my degree too, it took a long time. I waited until the kids were in high school, and I said, I'm just going to do one class, and both kids were both driving, and everybody, and some of my girlfriends, I'm sure this happened to you too. People were like, oh, you're actually like going there? I was like, yeah, I'm actually going there to New York City to take a class once a week. It's right over the George Washington Bridge. Look at that. But I credit you so much. That was an incredible lesson that Tony and I both, and Tony graduated with a poli-sci degree from Montclair State. So it worked. I think sometimes as a parent, modeling that behavior, it's better than saying any words. Like, the words go in and go out. You're a teenager, you're rebellious, you're all of that. But then you see evidence later in life that it sticks.
And it's the best thing you can give your children. I mean, it's the thing that they don't realize at that point how important education is. that's to say, I had children that were in line for education. If you don't have, I mean, not every family is going to say, "Oh, college," but it worked out in my case.
Can we talk a little bit about entrepreneurship? Because not only did you, for me, model a life that was filled with education, lifelong learning, and still lifelong learning, which we're definitely gonna talk about how you're manifesting that right now. But I looked at you through the lens of entrepreneurship too, Mon, because here you were. Danny had this very successful, very bougie salon in Tenafly, New Jersey, a very, very affluent town. And you worked for a time with him, and then you went on to have your own bookkeeping business. You did tax preparation. You worked at a tax accounting company for 13 years. So you worked in these small, privately held businesses that were, by today's standards, very uber successful. So you want to talk a little bit about the days of Salon 22? And Danny, and how that led you to create some of your own businesses. Again, when people weren't doing that, that wasn't like the mold that it is today, that let me do a side hustle. Let me, start a business. Let me open up a Shopify account. Like now that is all in vogue everywhere. So, power move education, but then boom, power move entrepreneurship. Otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here right now without that power move.
Well, the thing about when I was graduating from St. Peter's, one of the women in my class was the wife of a friend of Danny's. I think we were then married. Oh no, we weren't married yet. Anyway, we were together. And so she offered me, after a while, she offered me a job in the accounting firm that she and her husband ran. Prior to that, I had been working. Danny's receptionist quit, and we were having difficulty finding someone. So I jumped in and helped him with with running a salon. Now, running a salon is like, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, at this time, a lot of these women came from very wealthy households.
Yeah.
They didn't do much. They weren't working. Some were, but not many. And their big thing was every week they went to the hairdresser, and it was every week. We're talking, this is the kind of thing now. If you go every 3 months for a haircut, or every 6 months, or every 6 weeks for your color, it's a whole different story. But at that time, people went to a salon on a weekly basis. And I'm dealing with these women who talk about the most nonsensical things I have ever heard. And I don't know how to make small talk. So it was a different kind of education for me. And I had to step back a little bit and respect the fact that how I conducted myself mattered. I didn't want certainly people losing, didn't want them losing clients, because I didn't know how to be friendly and all sorts of things. And it was difficult. It was difficult for me to play that role.
Well, you had difficult, like, in fairness to you, and this happens everywhere, the shoes that you had to fill, they were used to the personality of Diane.
Yes, Diane.
Okay. They were used to this, like, and she had her own personality and her own way of dealing with people. And at a salon, still, people get very territorial. It gets very competitive. It's a very hard business. I would say that it's harder than a marketing agency.
It's difficult in itself.
Because you're dealing with people in person like 100% of the time. Yeah. And now they even actually have a show for that behavior, and it's called Housewives. Real Housewives of fill in the blanks,
Yeah.
this and that, and all of that kind of, petty cat fight stuff. And look, I think on Netflix or wherever you watch Housewives, for sure that a lot of that is staged, but part of that is very real.
Yeah.
So, here you had to come in, and no matter who was going to help fill those shoes, it wasn't Diane. So I don't think that you were set up for success. But can you talk a little bit about, because luckily you eventually left Salon 22.
But I was successful in what I
sure.
it's not a question that I couldn't learn.
Yeah.
But it took a while.
Yeah.
Took a while.
And then I would say one of the things that I really loved about that is how you and Danny brought people together, that you would open up your own home. And of course that you would cook for everybody. So you wouldn't get anything catered. And that was Danny's thing for me in terms of my education at home. He was like, watch how your mother cooks. And he's like, he wanted me to make sure. And this is, of course, he was Sicilian. And so he was born in Sicily. He spoke 2 fluent languages, but that was his big thing to me. I don't think he really cared where I went to school, but he definitely cared that I was watching you in the kitchen. And today, nobody, even after years of watching you in the kitchen today, nobody can cook like you. You even cooked on my birthday. That was one of the birthday presents that I said, hey, if you come over and cook your rice balls and your lasagna and your broccoli rabe, that is the best birthday present ever. But talk a little bit about that, because you were successful at Salon 22, but then you eventually left Salon 22.
Yes. And I went to work in the accounting office with my friends. And I spent 13 years there, and I learned, and the reason well, 2 things happened. Remember, I told you I got audited by the IRS.
Yeah.
Well, subsequent to that, I took an H&R Block course because I never wanted that to happen to me again. So I learned how to do my own taxes. And then, so when I went to work at the accounting firm, that worked out very nicely because I had taken the class, and I was prepared. So I worked there for 13 years. And from there, I went to work for Lou.
Yeah, Lou Weiss, who we both had the opportunity to work for, and talk about entrepreneurship, taking entrepreneurship and business owner to a whole nother level. And Lou had All Metals and Forge, which was a specialty metals distributor. So a lot of the metals that he dealt with were things that are used for nuclear, aeronautics. This is a very complex sale and a very complex business.
Yeah. And what happened, I was not a good fit. I'm not a salesperson. And what he needed, this was really out of my league altogether. I was not used to the kinds of things that I was being asked to do. I was not a quick study in that, so I didn't last there. Even though I'm good at a lot of things, I knew I wasn't good at that.
And setting you up for the next power move. You left Lou's company. It wasn't a good fit.
No. And so I went to work for another metals company for a while. But it was also not something that I wanted to do. Eventually I decided, I went to CCA Industries. I don't know if you've been.
Yes, I remember CCA Industries, and I remember actually driving East Rutherford.
Yeah,
was the office quite impressive. And what I remembered is that on Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, at the very end, they would have this little advertisement, and it would be sudden eye, and it was this almost magic formula that you would put on your eyes so that you weren't wrinkled anymore. And it would appear just for like 5 seconds. But when you went to work for that company, I was like, oh my God, this is that company. So literally I saw them everywhere. And this was before the internet, everybody.
Yeah.
So I think I was really impressed. And I remember walking in and seeing a whole plethora of packaging and products and things that I knew from magazines and from TV. So, and I mean, I'm not going to, I don't want to steal your thunder here, but that was a pretty cool job. And you were able to do something quite unique there.
Well,
with your clients.
right. I want to go back just 1 minute. When you come from a large family, there's you don't work well with others at times. You don't work, it's very difficult. You have this select group over here. And then, so what I found in my work life is I could not work for large companies. I needed to work for small companies. I did not do well. For a while, when I decided to go back to nursing, I went into a hospital. I worked at Hackensack Hospital for a while. But I couldn't take the bureaucracy. I just couldn't work in it.
Yeah.
So I went back. Anyway, so now I find this job at CCA Industries, and I'm working for the chairman of the board, and he gives me complete autonomy. I help him write his messages to the board holders, stockholders. I help him do whatever I need to do. We answer, because he's the chairman, we get all the letters of people who are going to sue the company for this, the eyebrow. Too much hair came off with my eyebrows. My eyes didn't do what they were supposed to. All sorts of letters. Believe me, there are people who sue for any reason. Anyway, so I worked for the chairman of the board, and I also did international sales. And I did this all by computer. I didn't have to leave the office, but I dealt with a number of companies. And one of the companies I dealt with was in Vietnam. And to get their company into a position where they could export our products or import our products, there was a lot of paperwork. And it took like over a year to do all of that. And I eventually, we got everything in order, and they started doing business with us. So they were a very good client. We had other people. I worked with this one guy in Spain, Danny and I, when we were in Europe, we went over and met him, not in Spain. And a couple of other people that I had really good relationships. The guys in Turkey. I have all sorts of things in my house that came from Turkey. I loved that job. I loved that job because of the fact that I had so much freedom. I was running my own business right there. Whatever went on in the other part of the company didn't affect me in a lot of ways. Then my boss got sick, and eventually he got too sick to work. So I was now in a different position. The salesman who did national sales took the international sales away from me. They literally stripped me of my job. So I stayed for a while. This was when my husband died.
Danny died in 2007.
Right, and this is in 2007. And so I decided not to do anything for a while. After my husband died, I said, oh, let me get my feet on the ground. Let me decide what I'm going to do. I'm 68 years old at this point, and I had been working at this job now for 9 years. And as I said, I was stripped of everything. I was like demoted. They couldn't even find a position that would make me happy. So eventually I just decided to quit. This was 6 months after my husband died. And so I said, oh, all right, what am I going to do now? Well, I made my bucket list. I took a job. Somebody pointed me in the direction of the Norwegian cruise line, and I taught computer classes on the Norwegian cruise line. I did 3 cruises with them.
Power move. I was like, you're doing what?
Yeah.
I was like, how in the world? Because again, this is dating. This is pre-internet stuff, or maybe it was just happening. Maybe the internet was like kind of just happening, but certainly social media wasn't happening. Social media hadn't happened yet. And I don't believe, maybe we had a flip phone, but we certainly didn't have an iPhone then. Right?
Right.
But we had digital cameras.
We had YouTube.
We had YouTube. We had digital cameras, right? God, all of that when so I so admired that, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. How my mom teaching on Norwegian cruise line.
Well, wait. So I'm teaching this class. Okay. So my granddaughter is 18 years old at this point, and I said to her, I want you to come on a cruise with me. I wanted to go to Europe, but there were none available. So we went to Alaska. Anyway, she comes along. And in my classes, I have her talk because people are asking questions that I really can't, or I can't answer specifically, not the way she can. So I hand it over to her, and I let her talk and tell what she can. And she's great. She just sits there and rattles off all this stuff. Meanwhile, I mean, I was computer savvy. I embraced technology. I loved technology.
You still do, Mom,
and still do. Anyway, so we do these 3 trips, 2 to Alaska, 1 to where was the other place?
You were international. I know that you were on a 3-week to South America.
South America was on my bucket list. I'd never been to South America, so I wanted to go to South America, and my sister came with me. My brother Patrick came with me for the second trip to Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but I had a great time with my granddaughter, a really great time. And then I took my sister, who was an attorney, to South America, and we got in more trouble. I don't know why I followed my sister, but we went into cars we shouldn't have gone into. We never got hurt or anything, but it was an adventure. Anyway, I come back from all of three tours. Now, the thing about cruising is after a while, the food is like, oh, you want to throw up. There's so much. Number one, there's so much of it. And number 2, it all tastes the same after a while.
Yeah.
And I couldn't go on another cruise. I just couldn't. And that was the last time I cruised then, because I genuinely could not get on a boat.
Okay. Well, let's, and so that was the last job was working for the cruise line. You eventually made a decision for retirement, which I think is like you're thriving now. Yeah. Absolutely. Your life is thriving. You hit your stride with your poetry. You're a published author and poet. I think that's huge. I'm really been impressed with that. I would love you to speak to our listening audience, because retirement is on everybody's radar, and I think people struggle with it. But then when I talk to people who are retired, they thought in the beginning that they were going to have all of this time, and they really don't have all of this time because they are leading into their hobbies and exploring new interests and doing travel and all of these things that your life has afforded you to do, Mom, because you made some of those power moves that we talked about, going from the West Coast to the East Coast, making the decision to go to school and leveling up your career, and then making the decision unequivocally to say, hey, I'm not in the right work environment. And then now, which leads you to today. So let's talk about what today looks like. I asked you to prepare a poem if you want to share, and if you want to read a poem. How many do you have published at this time? I mean, you should have I shouldn't have books right now. You should have a whole like volume 1 and volume 2 series now. You've been doing poetry for what, over 10 years?
For at least for about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I started out being a short story writer, and I've had a couple of those published. And one of the reasons I took poetry was to make my writing more concise. And but when I started taking poetry classes, I really, really enjoyed it. So I decided, yeah, poetry is difficult. It's a skill. You have to know what you're doing. It's not like when you were in high school and you pour out your guts and I'm this and I'm that. It's no. It's a lot different than that. It has form, it has function, it has a lot of things. So I'm taking I'm still taking poetry classes almost 10 years later, writing classes. As I said, I started out with writing. The thing about retirement for me is when I finally retired, I said, okay, I have got this bucket list. These are the things I want to do. And I had specific things I wanted to do, like cruising, becoming a speaker, an enrichment speaker on a cruise line. Okay, I did that, done that, check off. I'm never doing that again. And then I decided I wanted to be a docent at some museum. And I learned about grounds for sculpture, and I liked grounds for sculpture. It was different from the museums, the indoor museums where they talk about painting and things like this. I am not that detailed, so I loved talking about sculpture because I could talk about it in a way that was different than you had to talk about a painting. And yet, you're doing exactly the same thing, talking about an artist. So I took that course and I became a docent, and I'm there 10 years.
And we'll make sure that we put a link in the show notes, everyone. The Grounds for Sculpture is in Hamilton, New Jersey.
Right.
In Hamilton, New Jersey, the Grounds for Sculpture. And I think a little bit of background started by the
Seward Johnson,
right? The grandson of the Johnson and Johnson family,
one of the grandsons of one of the founders.
Who was self-taught too.
He was
right.
Seward Johnson was dyslexic and didn't do well in school.
And you see the thing that surprised me is that when I first went to Grounds for Sculpture because of you, Mom, and I saw Seward Johnson sculpture for the first time, I was like, wow, that looks so familiar. Literally, his sculptures are all over the world right now.
Yes, they are. And he was very instrumental in teaching when he was young. He had no idea what he wanted to do, and he happened on sculpture because of his wife. So this whole place was created because of that.
And when you go to Grounds for Sculpture, one of the things that I love is really learning about the story, that backstory, that humble origin story. And when you go to the Welcome Center, you're immediately directed into this room where they have the video showing.
Oh, they're not doing the video anymore.
Huh?
No.
Oh, because Stuart Johnson died.
Stuart Johnson died 3 years ago.
Okay.
But I spoke yesterday to Bruce, and I can't remember Bruce's last name. Bruce is the only survivor of who began Grounds for Sculpture. He's the only one. And I said to him yesterday, because we were at another event, I said to him, what happened to that film?
Yeah, bring back the video.
And I said to him, we need that video. And he agreed. And I said, and by the way, have you documented what you know in a film? And he said, no. I was so upset about it. I said, you get on it before it's for you. But anyway, Grounds for Sculpture is a wonderful place. Right. It is a fabulous place. And if you, I don't care, it is open to people who are Seward's whole thing was he thought the art world was too artsy, too full of itself. And he wanted a place where people would go and didn't have to be intimidated by the art. And that's one of the real joys of going to Grounds for Sculpture, where you look at, and there's over 300 pieces of sculpture outside, and we have several galleries where we show different things. Anyway, his whole thing was that everybody should be able to enjoy art. And he didn't care if people called it kitschy or common or whatever they wanted to. To him, it served the purpose of the bridge between the art world and the common man who might have not had an art education. I didn't have an art education. And I've learned a lot of things from the course, of course, that I had to take. And the fact that when we have a new exhibition, the artists come and talk.
I know. I was going to say one of the things that makes Grounds for Sculpture and your role there as a docent unique, Mon, is the fact that these artists are living. And so I know that when you have prepared for an exhibit, that you have gone through the process of actually speaking to the author, speaking to the creator,
right,
and really understanding the why of the piece and being able to explain it in a way that nobody else can.
Right. Right. I attended an exhibit yesterday.
I'm sure. Of course you did.
Anyway, okay. So
speaking of document, again, you know, this is our 100th episode of In the Suite. I knew that you were going to be the 100th guest, and how you wanted to make sure that Bruce over at Grounds for Sculpture is documenting. And let's kind of switch it up. I don't want to get too morbid here, but one of the things that I'm doing is documenting my journey about lung cancer. So the universe threw us an incredible blow. Nearly 3 years ago, January 16, 2023 will be my 3rd year cancerversary. And I did launch a second podcast, everybody who's listening, Lung Cancer Strong. So you could find it on all of the major podcast outlets. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify. We're also available on YouTube as well, because I thought that it was really important to make sure that what's in my head and what I've learned can benefit other people. Mm-hmm. And the way to disseminate that knowledge is not necessarily only by me having a one-on-one conversation, but for me being able to leverage my digital media skills. Thank you, NYU. Thank you, intentionally. And I know how this distribution model works. So it's been a lot, the whole cancer journey for me. I do want to say that up until recently, you have really been almost at every appointment. But, you know, it's different. Neither one of us expected for us to be in this situation. I'll tell you that. What do you think has helped us to remain strong through a very, very challenging and very difficult time?
So I feel like I'm in some sort of suspended animation. It's difficult. When Tina received this diagnosis, it was like, what? You're not talking about her. And I just didn't know what do you do? I'm a parent. What do I do? So the only thing, and look at her. She looks healthy. And yet I go to these hospital visits with her, and I watch her getting drugs, lethal drugs. And I watch her come out of it. And all I can do is just sit there. There's not a thing. It's all out of my hands. I just don't know what to do. I only hope that as time goes on, she remains as she is. She's resilient and has tolerated, as I said, the lethal drugs that she's receiving. I can tell you that the person that you see here today has pulled herself together. Frequently, she doesn't feel well. Frequently, she wants to get back in bed and just pull the covers over her head, but she doesn't do that. I've watched her. I watch all of her stuff. So, I mean, I'm her mother. What else?
She's the best. I got to tell you, you were the best auditor, and like you were responsible for the growth of In the Suite. I forgot the amazing amount of statistics about how many countries. It's like an insane amount. Over 83 countries, over 1,500 cities. Like, there is an appetite and there's a thirst for hearing real people's stories.
Right.
And that's what it is. Unfiltered to a certain extent, and information that will benefit people. So just like you being here in the suite, I wanted to inspire. If one woman listens to this broadcast and makes a power move, a change in job, for example, a decision to study, a decision to maybe even, leave a relationship that isn't serving her, that's I think hearing the boldness. So yeah, we have a lot of great plans for Lung Cancer Strong. And I'm so grateful that you're my mom. And that you've been here for all of it. And yeah, it's been a hard thing to watch somebody go through. I can't even imagine it. I'm a mother of 2 kids. I'm a grandmother of 3. So, thank God that everyone is healthy. But, we're on our 3rd cancer hospital. And I think, if anybody takes anything away, we've both had parallel tracks of just being resilient. That's what it all comes down to. So a couple of things before we wrap up here. Are there any other secrets, Mom? And one of the things that we get stopped for is that people will stop you at how great you look, your hair. I mean, you look phenomenal for a woman who is approaching her 84th birthday. Amazing.
Good genes.
Okay. So I can't tell you part of it.
Good genes
are part.
I mean, look at my daughter. She doesn't look her age either.
I hope not, you guys. 59. So we're rocking 59 here. Are there any other, I think, do you agree with me that this vitality comes from the inside? Like, it's not like, oh, I use this amazing skincare product, or this is what I do for my hair. I feel that the lessons of lifelong learning, power moves, being resilient, trying new things, and keeping yourself open are part of the things that have been responsible for your inner and outer beauty, and you keeping you just amazing. All my girlfriends from Tenafly High School still say to me, "Oh my God, your mom, Tina, is so beautiful. She looks incredible." And I would say, and you maintain your health too. You're at a healthy weight, so you eat the right things as well.
Yeah, I really think that the secret to looking good is being engaged with life. I don't think there's another. I mean, you can try all the skin creams that you want. Some of us are blessed with good genes, others not so much. So I can only say so much about that. But I do feel that most of us can keep ourselves mentally sharp by doing the things that we need to do to stay engaged with life. The other thing is, I've been always a proponent of exercise. Always loved things like Pilates, yoga. I can't do either one of them right now, but it hurts a great deal that I'll never be able to bend into the lotus position again. But what can I tell you? Such is life. So that, I think, is the most important thing that I can think about life. The fact that I've gotten this far, I don't have a whole lot to do with it because, I mean, other than keeping myself fit and things like this, I'm obviously, this kind of a thing is not within my bailiwick to say, "Oh, I did so much to get here." No, I just would wake up on a daily basis. I don't think you can attribute how long you live to you. It's not within our bailiwick.
Yeah, there are additional forces where, well, you just answered our last question about what's the health or the wellness tip. Is there anything else that you want to say to our listeners on this commemorate 100th episode of In the Suite?
So I am extremely grateful for my children. If anything in life has been, has given me pleasure and pain, it's been my children. I have one brilliant daughter and one really smart, brilliant son. And I have been blessed with being their mother.
Thank you. What a way to wrap up. Okay, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this amazing episode with my mom, Joanne Sutera. This was especially really meaningful to me that you were here. And I could pinch myself that we're here at the 100th episode. And many, many, many years ago, it was a goal of mine. And to be sitting here across the table from you and in no other than Intentionally Offices, which is like a second home for me. And thank you, Kelly Waltrick, as well, too. Kelly was here earlier. And thank you, listeners. If you have any questions for my mom, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you if anybody has any questions?
I have an email, jms330@gmail.com.
Okay, and I'll make sure that that's in the show notes. And for anyone that wants a personalized tour of Grounds for Sculpture, she's your gal. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a great week.